go and you look at it, it says here that this stone was erected by her son, Peachy Wall. Her first husband was a guy named Wall. Peachy Wall ended up being a large landowner, actually up in what is now Hernando County, Florida. Moved to Tampa, became one of the early. He didn't sell hardware. He sold stuff to hardware stores. He was basically a warehouse guy. Okay, he invented that kind of stuff and became strong enough that he actually ran in the gubernatorial election in Florida. I think in 1896 in the Democratic primary, which was, of course, the way you got the job. Although at the end of the late unpleasantness, he was known to be a supporter of he was a unionist. Mm-hmm. He said, we need to rejoin the union, which actually there were several Floridians who were like that. Anyway, so he has these children. So Wall has an ancient Wall, has a couple of sons by Susanna Whitehurst, who then, after he dies, marries Shadrach Sutton. Oh, one other point, just for bragging. P.G. Wall, one of his sons, I believe, was a guy named William W. Wall, who, if you read the documents correctly, actually figured out the mosquitoes transmitted yellow fever 10 years before Walter Reed did.
Huh.
Okay, so, just saying. Okay, you can brag. Let's go brag. Okay, so Susanna Whitehurst Wall marries Shadrach Sutton, and they were in Georgia. They moved down to Hamilton County, Florida. Shadrach Sutton was the first sheriff, or one of the first sheriff of Hamilton County, Florida, 1828. Florida became part of the U.S. in 1821, so we're talking really early here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so she marries Shadrach Sutton. They end up moving far enough. They end up migrating down in the 1840s to what is now Hernando County, Florida. It was then Benton County, named for Thomas Hart Benton, who wrote the bill that allowed people to seize Native American lands in places like Florida. But then Mr. Benton turned out to be an abolitionist, and so they changed the name of Benton County to name it after Hernando de Soto. Anyway, Benton was also, one of the Bentons was involved in an actual duel with, of course, Andrew Jackson, who shot many people. Okay, so Susanna Sutton and she marries Simon Whitehurst.
Simon Whitehurst.
Yeah, the daughter of Shadrach Sutton marries this fellow Simon Whitehurst, who was in the. Did I get it backwards?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
The daughter of Simon Whitehurst.
Yes, she's the daughter. I'm sorry. Okay, she's the daughter of Simon Whitehurst, who's the father of both Daniel and John, who fought in the army. We don't know much about Shadrach
Daniel
Sutton.
Whitehurst right there.
Okay. Probably from eastern North Carolina, but that's a good guess. Okay, so Susanna Whitehurst Wall Sutton is who we have here. She is our is it Susanna, Susan, Margaret, and Frank Wall. She is Tom and I and Greg's
third, because of the grandfather.
Yeah, third great grandmother. That means
So
Michael,
fourth grade.
great grandmother, fourth great grandmother, five great grandmother. Okay. Born in the 1820, she was born in 1786. Dies about in the 1870s sometime. One of the earliest graves in the cemetery because the church was founded in 1869. Okay. She and her brothers both. So
Okay.
she and Simon Whitehurst have.
She and Shadrach.
She and Shadrach Sutton. I'm going to get this right. I've been drinking. Okay.
We know.
For the gin.
Yes.
Okay.
David ends in
She and
Y.
Shadrach Sutton have 4 children, from which descend all the Suttons of this region. If you see anyone in the cemetery whose last name is Sutton, you are their cousin. And many of these people are folks that are intermarried. Okay, so.
Married their own cousin? Okay.
What?
It was a thing people did back then.
Susanna Sutton is the mother.
Tom, what are you doing later?
I've got plans.
Well, there are some. John A. Sutton.
Woo.
You just tripped over your cousin, dude.
Oh yeah, the Garrisons are cousins. Let's see. John. Well, here's Emily Robinson, who's one of the Suttons, she she's the part of the Robinson family. So again, all these families are interconnected. John A. Sutton, who is very, I think,
General area.
yeah, right here, like I said. The daughter, he's the son of Susanna Whitehurst Sutton. He's born in 1818. And he is the one who donates the land for this church, okay? Which the Suttons are exceedingly proud of. But John was one of the sons, several others. If I look at them, I can tell you. The other child that we're most interested in, the other Sutton we're most interested in, and this is confusing, is Susan Sutton. Of the John A., Emily, one other, and Susan. Okay. Susan, and this is broken. Susan Sutton is born in around 1826. She comes down with the family into what is now Hernando, and they migrate down here. We know that Susan arrives before the 1850 census because she and her husband, Josiah Daniel, are mentioned in the 1850 census as living in the old Tampa Bay settlement. And they're the earliest of our kin that are showed up here. We know that, well, we don't exactly know what happened to Josiah, but Merrick Daniel told Frank Pilaski that he was not a good man.
Okay.
And that he needed to be run off. But
he ran off with Leonard Hartley.
no, he didn't. That's another story. No, my guess is that he was doing worse things. But anyway, so she ends up living with the rest of the family. She dies in 1896.
So she's the first, but the two previous generations are also buried here.
Yeah. So her mother is Susanna Whitehurst Sutton. Her father is Shadrach Sutton, who died before they moved here. He is buried somewhere on an anonymous grave in Hernando County, somewhere near the Melendez settlement, or the Anudalija hammock, which is where they had land. Okay, so you got this going on. So, so she's there here, 1896. Now, Josiah Daniel and Susan Sutton Daniel have 4 children. Okay, one of them is Josiah Rufus Daniel. If you see anyone in the cemetery whose last name is Daniel, they're your cousin.
That's right.
Okay, so Uncle Rufus.
75% of the cemetery so far between Whitehurst, Sutton, and Daniel.
It really is amazing, especially this sort of big square of it. So that's Uncle Rufus.
Those are all Suttons.
My grandfather, Frank Wall Hartley, said. Frank Wall Hartley. Thank you. Frank Wall Pilaski, grandfather, great-grandfather, said that Uncle Rufus. Uncle Rufus ended up becoming a Mormon. A lot of the Daniels became Latter-day Saints. But he ended up having several other wives in sequence. But anyway, Frank Wall said that when Uncle Rufus would say grace, for the family, he'd say, God bless Daisy and Sue and Conrad and Hugh and Emma and Leela and Hamp and Dutch and Jerry and Charlie and Winnie. And Lord, if there be others I know not of, bless them also. Okay, so.
In other words, if I have bastard children.
Yeah, I know. But now the names are correct. The part that Frank Wall inserted is probably fiction because he was a great storyteller.
Right.
But anyway, so that was his uncle. So Susan is going to have Josiah, and there are others around here. But, come this way. Okay. There is, over here is Amanda Daniel Dixon, who was one of the brother, a sister to Rufus, a daughter of Susan Daniel and Josiah Daniel. She married Aaron Dixon, who died suffering a massive heart attack on Grandma and Grandpa's front porch.
Front or back?
Back porch in the 1930s. Okay, anyway, I know on Facebook, well, actually, you know who married Barbara Dixon?
Steve Pagiotis.
Yeah, the guy who was first trumpet in the high school band with us is actually part of our family by marriage. Anyway, you'll find out these things. Anyways, all the Dixons out here are related.
So cousins.
Oh, they're all cousins. Okay, so we got Rufus and Amanda, and then we have, I think they're related to him who's related to him. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we have, let's see what's going on here, but Catherine married Uncle Ed Sawyer. Okay? Uncle Ed Sawyer was a Bahamian. He was in the area. He married Catherine Daniel. Okay. I don't know where she's married, but he lived with Grandpa and Grandma Pilaski near the end of his life in the 1930s. Uncle Frank remembered him. Dad even remembers him a little bit. An interesting story. Grandma, great grandma was his executrix. I remember somewhere in her house, and God knows where it is, was the Uncle Ed Sawyer's will and her a copy of her inventory of his property. Okay, so, but the one we're really interested in
Margaret.
is a Margaret. Here's the fourth one. Margaret Daniel married Charles Pilaski in the late 1880s. Charles arrived here probably 1885. By that time, you can see she is probably the daughter who was assigned to care for her parents. The daughter who would never marry. This is something that happens in culture at this point. So, 1851, 61, 71, 81, she's already in her mid-30s by the time she marries, which is probably, oh my God, okay. But they get married. They have 3 children that
First, Pilaski's in America.
and Charles is full of stuff. Charles we know about. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a Civil War picture that was in your dad's room, and
Right.
she's in it, right?
That's right.
Okay.
She's in
There's
it.
her.
And so is he.
Yeah,
Charles.
Charles
is in it.
First
I need to
Pilaski in
see
America.
that and make sure exactly when it is. We know. Say what about Charles Pilaski? Charles Pilaski came over from what was then Prussia. He was born in Poznan, which is now in Poland. He arrived in the United States 1861, maybe 62. He arrives in New Jersey. He is met closely soon after by some rich New Jersey dude who doesn't want to participate in the draft. He gets paid a couple $100s and takes the draft position. And so he ends up in the Union Army. Paul,
4th New Jersey Volunteer
New Jersey
Infantry,
Volunteer.
Company
all
G.
that kind of stuff. And so he ends up actually he's in Richmond for a while after the late unpleasantness, as we call it in Richmond.
The Second War for Independence.
Yeah.
Depending on your persuasion.
Exactly.
The War of Northern Aggression.
Yeah. When I take people
That's
to
how I
Hollywood
learned how to-
Cemetery, I say it's the burial place of either 2 or 3 presidents, depending on how you count. Anyway.
Yeah.
Mr. Davis is buried there as well as Mr. Monroe and Mr. Tyler.
God will vindicate.
Who, by the way, through the Hartley clan, is our cousin. John.
Yeah, knew that.
Anyway,
Who, by the way, has a living grandchild.
That's right. Yeah, he still does. It's stunning. Okay, so Charles ends up. We know that he ends up in Mississippi. God only knows why. But then he ends up. The story I've heard is that he ran into a guy. I think it was Jay Creever. The postal guy. Someone down here says we need people to work and manage orange groves. He says I'm up for that. And so, 1885 or so, he ends up coming down here. He marries Margaret Pilaski, I think in 1888, and they have 3 children that lived, and they had 3 children that died. We do not know their names. We just have a good idea from Grandma that they're buried right here. Okay? Apparently 2 were twins. That was what Grandma said. They're
Great-grandma and
supposedly
great-grandpa
on
right
the
there.
chart of the cemetery that Grandpa Hartley made, that of course the Methodists lost. Okay, so any Methodist present, I apologize. Okay, so but Margaret, so they were quite old by the time Frank Wall and all that. They had 3 children. Frank Wall was their latest in 1893. Catherine Permelia Pilaski, or Aunt Meal as she was called, who I remember, was one of the other ones, and Bruno Donatus Pilaski, and that's who I'm named for. I'm not named Donatus. Okay, so Uncle Boone was how he was referred to. So they ended up moving during the Depression. They moved to Ohio, to Columbus, and actually Frank Wall and Grandma moved there and spent a little bit of time up there during the Depression to see if they could fit there. They ended up moving back. But for that, we would all be from Ohio, which is a fate worse than death. Anyway, so
I agree.
so we don't know much about, but we know pictures of Margaret. Just so you'll know, her favorite hymn was, and I'm going to forget it now. Her favorite hymn was Blood, one of the Blood hymns. There's a fountain filled with blood.
Yeah.
I don't know how I know that, but I know that. Yeah.
Bruno's son was Don Pilaski, and he had 3 kids, Cookie, Kevin, and Mike Pilaski, who is famous for...
Ohio State football, Mike Pilaski.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, Rose Bowl.
actually-
He played against
Mike.
O.J. Simpson in the Rose Bowl
Yeah.
in 1969.
Yep. And O.J. Simpson in the Rose Bowl is actually now the punchline to a very funny joke.
Oh,
Anyway,
but let's yeah. Let me know if you want to tell it. I'll stop the video.
no, I'm not. I am lying. And you know why I'm lying? Because I'm the grandson of Frank Wall Pilaski. That's why.
Okay.
Speaking of which, okay.
Right to your right.
Okay, so we got here. Frank Wall Pilaski grew up in the area, but as you can tell from the ages, by the time he's 20 years old, by the time he's 10 years old, it's 1903. By the time he's 20 years old, his mother has already died. Charles Pilaski spent the last years of his life first going back and forth, apparently, to Illinois, to the Army Old Soldiers Home, and then finally dies there.
And we've seen his grave.
And so if you go to Danville, Illinois, you can find the grave of Charles Pilaski, spelled with a U, not an O. Apparently, all his immigration papers, his citizenship papers spell it with a U. He swore out an affidavit later in life saying, "I have always signed it with an O." And so,
I've heard a story about that
Yeah.
there's a letter in Polish that's like an A and a U together.
Yeah.
And we don't have that in our thing, so
Maybe.
they had
Right.
to choose.
well, and the thing I was researching, trying to figure out this Don thing, because I'm personally concerned with it. But Donatus is actually a Latinized version of the Polish name Donej, which may explain why the family picked it up. Okay, I am the only Donald in the family, because
Uncle Don is.
Uncle Don was just Don, and Michael is Don Michael. So I'm the only Donald. In case you're keeping track of that at home. Okay. Frank Wall Pilaski, born 1893. So I mean, he's sort of on his own, and there are a lot of Grandpa Frank Wall stories that we might not tell. Not only about his upbringing, but about the ones he told. We got lots of them. He marries Clarine Pilaski, Edith Clarine Pilaski. They elope, big family secret, in 1921, the fall of 1921, and are married in Hillsborough County. This apparently is not the most pleasant thing that the Hartley family ever heard. Just saying. Okay, so it is through Frank Wall that we go back and hit the Whitehursts and Suttons and Daniels and everybody. Okay, that's the way we're related to everyone who lived in Palm Harbor, or at least in Curlew, this part of Palm Harbor, by the middle of the 20th century. Okay. So that's any questions on this side of the family? Okay, so
If just going back quickly,
yeah,
it's like Frank Wall, and then you go to Margaret Daniel,
yeah,
and then you go to Susan
Sutton Daniel.
and then to Susanna Sutton,
yeah.
Whitehurst Sutton.
Those are your generations. So for me,
I'm gonna
it's-
need a tree with it drawn all out.
There's
Well-
one printed up in the office.
I can write it out for you too. So you got for you and you, it's great grandfather, great great grandmother, great 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 grandmother, and great 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 grandmother. And Emma gets one more grade. Yeah, just
Yeah, just add one to
Emma
all
is,
of
of
those.
course, the plus factor.
Taking notes?
By the way, this one right here, Granny,
That's
the absolute best key lime meringue pie you have ever eaten in your entire life.
I mean,
There are songs written about it.
festal odes written about the kind of stuff that Grandma would produce out of the.
I do believe that was the first time this group of pallbearers that did it
Yes.
today.
Yes, we carried
We
her.
were all together for Granny's funeral.
Which I don't know who picked out the solid oak, but
No, that
thank
was
you for
Grandpa.
that.
That
Yeah.
was, that was Grandpa Pilaski.
Thanks,
There was a
Grandpa.
ton.
Yeah, well, you take
Yeah,
care of him.
that thing weighed about 3 tons, and she was
I think it was
85
ripping out
pounds
shoulders.
soaking wet.
She was tiny.
Yeah.
No, that one wasn't bad. It was Grandpa's that was super heavy.
Like an obstacle course.
Can
anyway.
I tell the story of the Moss Feaster mess
Oh
up?
yeah, go right ahead. Please
Oh.
do it so I don't have to say dirty
Okay,
words.
so Moss Feaster, who handled this service today.
We're going to edit this part out.
Yeah, and did it.
Why they named her Edith Clarine. Okay, their names, I don't know. Anyway, born in 1903, she is the daughter of Thomas W. Hartley and Ida Eulalia Stanton Hartley. It is through Grandma Hartley, the Stanton line, that we are related to various famous figures. That's a branch we've been able to trace back. If you ever go to Jamestown and go to the museum in Jamestown, you will see the spoon of your 10th, 11th, or 12th great grandparents, the Childs family. Anyway, but Grandma Stanton, Ida Stanton was from Madison County, Florida. And Thomas Hartley, the guy who found her and married her, was from Illinois. And his family came from Yorkshire, England. Okay, so Grandma was there. So we're going backward instead of starting in the end and coming to the. We're starting here and then we're going up. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and there's like tons of things that could be said about the Hartley family. I'm going to keep it, reasonably brief and all that. Okay. Emily Robinson is one of the sons. Okay.
In case you're worried about
In
that.
case you were wondering. Okay. Let's see. Here, you gotta find this. Here they are. Here they are. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's so we got to skip a generation. We'll
Why?
go back to Thomas W. Hartley. is
Well,
way over
yeah,
there.
I'm gonna do it. I'm more than these people are smart. We can do this.
That's right.
We're
Probably
actually
more than
going to
one
go a
thing in their hand.
generation back with Hartley's here. Thomas Hartley was the son of James Hartley, born in Yorkshire, England, 1836, and Frances Hartley, born in Boyle County, Kentucky, in either 1840 or 1842, depending on what you think. Okay. She was originally Frances Yates. I have never been able to figure out.
Yeah.
I've got some ideas, but no. Okay. They were married. Apparently, Frances Yates' family or her ended up moving out of Kentucky, Indiana, into Illinois. James Hartley, with his brother Thomas, immigrates in the mid-1850s and buys land not far from where you lived in Illinois.
Right.
It's in outside of Watseka. Well, Watseka is the county seat. It's outside of Gilman, Illinois. I actually, a few years ago, when I was doing a college trip with Hannah, I made sure we drove past it and tried to figure out where the land was. We were in the middle of a severe thunderstorm, which means we almost got the car stuck in the mud. So the end of the story was I sprayed mud all over my daughter, all that kind of stuff, and we almost trespassed in somebody's farm. But anyway, land's still there, no evidence of them. Okay, they moved down here mid-1880s. James is moving down because, like so many people, it's his lungs. He wants to go to somewhere that he can actually breathe. And so they say Florida, even that in those days. Buy land on the high ground away from the ocean. So that's what he does. So he ends up moving down here. As well as his brother Thomas. If you're thinking about where the land is now, James Hartley is going to buy land that includes the museum and everything, including everything from Belcher Road down and including all of what is now Spanish Oaks. Okay, that's their land. Thomas Hartley buys land that if you go down Curlew Road, about the place where Spanish Oaks begins, his land was over there. He was known to be a beekeeper, among other things. Okay, so, but his wife and child both died young, so that was what he had to do. Okay, James and Frances moved down here with their son Thomas W. Hartley, who was born in 1867. So they moved down here when he was 15, 16 years old, which means he was never in high school, all those kinds of things. So that's the way they started out. We don't know too terrifically much about them, but we do know a couple of things that as family members you ought to know. When Grandpa Hartley went to marry Ida Eudalia Stanton, who was North Florida Southern lady, you know, we know that Frances was not impressed, and she actually ran away, and ended up in the Isle of Palms, near Fort Moultrie.
Yeah,
outside of Charleston.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a completely hokum story when Grandma told it to me. And guess what? Well, I finally found her in the 1910 census in Sullivan's Island.
Huh.
So,
Yeah.
So what happens is, you know, she's upset. She runs away. Very soon afterward, James Hartley dies. Actually, apparently, in downtown, what is now downtown Palm Harbor. So he passes away. Grandpa Hartley does his funeral. We have a record book that indicates that he did that. And, well, then what you gonna do? His estate needs to be dealt with. Well, guess what? You go to into Hillsborough County, and you find the will, and you find a copy of the advertisement in the Tampa Times that the family put in there. It says, we need to find this woman. Okay? They didn't find her until 1910 or afterward. Okay? So, you know, interesting confirmation on that story. Eventually, Grandpa Hartley, they figure out where she is. They find out she's not doing well. Grandpa Hartley goes up on the train, brings her home. But on the way home...
He's her son?
This is her son. Thomas Hartley is her son. So he's the only child. Is bringing her home. At the depot in Tarpon Springs, she has an episode that leaves her basically an invalid. And so she ends up living a couple of years with them in their house before she dies. One of the woman who cares for her during that time is Aunt Mad Daniel. From the other side, what becomes the other side of the family. So, it's a story we don't know all the details of, but it's peculiar. Okay, it shows that sometimes families tell stories that are actually truthful. You just have to dig for it. Okay, so they have their land and everything, but now they have only one son, Thomas William Hartley. Thomas Hartley, Thomas named for him. Thomas Hartley and his wife, Grandma Hartley, Ida Eudalia, I just like to say Eudalia Stanton, have 4 children, 3 of whom are buried here. Uncle Orion, who was the youngest child, Orion Stanton Hartley, who's buried here, and his wife Virginia, who I guess I knew, until he died only 10 years ago.
I remember.
Yeah, so, but Uncle Orion died, he died about a week after I graduated from college.
Yep.
So, you know,
Okay.
and he was, I will say one thing about Uncle Orion. It was told that, of course, people here, what did they do? They lived by earning how they could. And when he was young, he could pick up 2 laden orange crates, one with each arm.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, okay.
We didn't
And then
get
you
any
look
of
at
that.
me and you say, how are you related to this guy? You know?
Point of interest.
Yeah.
I remember her.
Yeah, Melanie.
Melanie.
It's Helen's
You
daughter.
remember Helen. Okay, we'll go this way because you'd say, why are...
I remember Melanie because I met her at her family reunion when I was a kid in the early 80s, and she had a really rockin' C3 Corvette that I got to ride in.
Okay, yeah, okay,
You are
okay, yeah,
correct.
okay, yeah.
Yes, you are
And
correct.
she's Helen's daughter, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, Helen's daughter.
But yeah, I'll say the 4 Hartleys, and then we'll try to break it down. Orion is right here. Lucy Hartley Berry is over with them. Grandma Hartley, Edith Clarine Pilaski, you know her very well. Uncle Leonard, James Leonard Hartley, sort of faded away from the family. He did some things that Grandpa Hartley apparently didn't like, consorting with women apparently. And so Grandpa Hartley, being not always the most affirming person, apparently, you know, he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Okay. And he's in Orlando. He's buried in Orlando somewhere. But they're cousins still. There are other Hartleys.
Right, and there's one up here.
Yeah, there's one up in Albemarle, North Carolina.
That's right.
Okay.
Is she the one who manages the band?
Yeah. So I will just say one more word because this person isn't dead yet.
She's working on it. She's 96.
Hey, she's 96, so she's got it surrounded. But anyway, Helen is one of Aunt Lucy's children, and she's the only surviving child of Aunt Lucy, okay, who was the first of Grandpa and Grandma Hartley's children, born in 1901. Helen is still with us. Melanie was her only daughter, who tragically passed away.
Diabetes.
Diabetic stuff. Yeah. So, anyway, but yeah, I remember Melanie as well, because Melanie was, like I said in the funeral today, you got a cool cousin who's just a little bit older than you. Yeah. He sort of fills in. Okay. So, let's go talk about Grandpa and Grandma Hartley.
I'm getting all this down.
It's going on video. It's there forever.
Look, all the Garrisons and all these people, they're related to you. Okay. Yes. We just don't know how.
This woman here was our elementary school principal.
Yes.
Daisy Revere.
Yeah, Daisy Revere was principal of Ozona Elementary from 1936 to 1971.
Dang.
Wow.
She was formidable.
And she's buried with her sister, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I meave never married. You know. Oh, okay. Since we're here, Phil knows the story.
Revere.
Frank Wall told a story on Mr. Lowell Revere. He said that one day at the Methodist Church, Lowell Revere was called up to read the scripture, but he got nervous, and it was out of the book of Judges. He got nervous, and he said that Samson took the jawbone of a horse's ass and slew 10 million Philadelphians. And was he the one who? No, is he the one who was kneeling praying at the front of the church?
Had the big feet.
Yeah. And it said that, I guess Frank wouldn't know this, but it's a story that apparently there was a revival up at the church here, and Lowell Revere was like, he was affected.
Under conviction.
He was under conviction. That's the right term. And so he came forward, and
he was barefoot.
And so he was kneeling at the altar, and then the preacher was going around to bless everyone, and he grabbed a hold of Lowell Revere's heels and said, "And God bless this lovely set of twins."
So there you go.
Again, fiction.
Probably not true.
It's probably not true, but it's
a good
truer.
story.
It's truer in a deeper sense. Okay.
It's a good story.
Yeah.
If you say it enough times, it becomes true.
Yeah, that's right. It's tradition, right? Okay.
And is Mr. Revere going to contradict us? I think not.
And this is a stinging one.
You're not stuck on there. No. Yes. We spent a lot of time as kids trying to figure out how to distill the poison out of those and make a really cool spray.
Oh.
It never worked.
Oh, by the way, when I said earlier about, Daisy and Sue and Conrad and Hugh and all that, that's Daisy. Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Why would Thomas W.
Now,
Hartley be
you
buried
might
so
ask,
far away from everybody else?
You might ask, why aren't Thomas Hartley and Ida Hartley buried with the other Hartleys? Because apparently he wanted to be buried next to the church.
Okay.
Okay.
He is actually right there next to the church.
Well,
You can see it from the road.
he got what he wanted, right? Okay, he's just starting to figure out who's related to whom. Okay. What?
a rabbit.
Oh, this is a bunny right here.
There's a bunny on there
And a dog.
and a dog.
The
We
bunny's
don't,
much
we don't know who they are, but
No.
it's really kind of cool.
There it is. Now, Thomas Hartley, is that
That's
Judge?
That's Grandpa Hartley or Judge Hartley.
Judge
Okay.
Hartley. So
Thomas
Judge
Hartley.
Hartley House, that's him.
Yeah, Thomas Hartley, the son of James and Frances Hartley, inherited the land of 40 acres there, and lived their house that they originally, there are several houses. When James and Frances moved, there was a very small house near where the entrance to Spanish Oaks is now, called the Shack.
I remember it.
Okay, and it eventually, when the land got out of the family, there's another story. It became a place where migrant workers and finally fell in on it. So.
Cool.
But then they built another house, which is near where the well is, on the property now, and they lived. James and Frances lived there along with Thomas, and then Thomas gets married, and that's where they start housekeeping, and that's their house until about 1919 to 1920. Sometime in the late teens is when they build the Hartley house. Okay. Then at the same when they moved, then his brother Thomas actually moves into the old house. Okay. So, oh gosh, where to even start with these people? Grandpa Hartley was he was a Methodist lay speaker, which meant that he could go preach if he needed to. Okay, which he did on occasion. The story is told that along around 1900 or so, along in there, he was offered to be made the pastor of a church in Key Largo. He wanted to do it. Grandma Hartley said, "There is no way you're going to do that." He didn't do it. Okay. So again, and you got the stuff at the museum that fills in a lot of the other details. Born in Illinois, never educated, but knew how to play the piano and all this other. He's just a really interesting character, and I really can't do him justice in 5 minutes.
Ladder factory.
And then what you end up with, well, the first thing they do on the land when James and Frances are there, and then when as Thomas is growing, is they grow fruit, and they actually ship fruit under the Hartley name out. Unfortunately, the huge freezes of the late 1880s and 1890s really harmed that. If you look at James Hartley's will, which I've got somewhere, you can see how many fruit trees he had that were non-productive. What those freezes did in terms of reducing the kind of load he could bear. Well, one thing that Grandpa Hartley ended up doing, in addition to keeping going with fruit, is he figured out how to make cypress ladders, and had a small factory that made them. Okay, and you probably can remember the factory.
I remember it.
I don't remember, but you can see where it was over on the lot next to the house.
We have slides of it.
Yeah. And did right well. They survived. They did not. The property got out of the family in the late 30s, depression, and he borrowed money and he couldn't pay it back. Okay. The story on that, though, is the guy from Tampa that got the land for cheap also didn't know what the hell he was doing. So he couldn't run an orange grove and or whatever was left and all that. So he sold out to Johnny Jones, who's actually our cousin on the other side, because we're related to everybody. And what Johnny Jones did is he said, okay, I'm getting the property, but the 5 acres around the house, I'm gonna let Thomas Hartley and his family live there and have. Because for a while they were essentially squatting in the house. So, things are tough and they're close. But then they made it through. Grandma Hartley, famous, of course, the museum says famous for guava, jellies, and all sorts of stuff. There is one story. I guess maybe I'll stop with this story because it is typical of Frank Wall, and it's really typical of Grandpa Hartley. It is said that one day Grandpa Hartley was going to Clearwater with Mr. Chamberlain. He's buried somewhere close here. Chamberlain, and one other guy. And
In Mr. Chamberlain's car.
in Mr. Chamberlain's like Model A or something. Well, at that point, the bridge over Stevenson Creek going into Clearwater wasn't straight. It had a big bend in it because that's just the way they built it. And apparently, they were on the way home. Mr. Chamberlain hit the gas instead of the brake, and they went right off into the creek. And it said that Mr. Chamberlain, and this is Frank Wall's story, that Mr. Chamberlain, he came up a crying, and the other guy came up a cursing, and Hartley came up a praying. But anyway,
Because he didn't know how to swim.
because they didn't know how to swim, because why would you?
Yeah.
And so he walks all the way home from Clearwater, which isn't a big deal, I guess. And
Sopping wet.
And of course he dries out a little bit, but of course he was wearing a regular suit because you just wear that. And the starched collar was of course just shot because of all this. And when they got home, Grandma Hartley said, "Papa, it's been so warm, you sweat through your collar." So, it's not a hugely funny story, but a little local color. So, and there's so many other, there's so many other things to tell. But this is sort of the beginning. Is this understandable?
So 3 generations of Hartleys in this cemetery.
Well, you got James, number 1, from Yorkshire. Thomas, number 2. You've got Aunt Lucy and Grandma
And Uncle Orion.
and Uncle Orion. That's generation 3. And then you've got Lucy's children. Helen will be buried there. Uncle Phil passed away in
All right, so 4
2016. Aunt Anne, I don't know where she's buried.
Probably New York.
Probably.
Well, or Newport Richie. I think that's maybe where that's where they ended up living when she passed. Or in New York. They lived in New York. And let's see, Anne, Anne, Phil, Dick, and Helen. And Uncle Dick passed away. I think he's buried in Chiefland. Actually, his ex-wife just passed away this week.
Just a day after
And Anne,
Yeah.
and Fleta.
She died on the 14th.
Yeah.
Fleta.
Yeah, who I now know was actually an imperial. You learn these things. So those were the 4 Berry children that are also, they're also cousins, and all their descendants as well. So anyway, there are a few of us around. How was this? I know I was.
And Phil, you're named for Uncle Phil?
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
The James is from.
James Hartley is how you got Philip James. Yeah.
Because she hasn't seen it, let's go to Frank and Lynn's.
Yes.
I saw
Well,
it.
Oh, you saw it. You saw it.
If you
Okay.
want to see it.
Yeah, it's right there.
You ever want to find my folks' quad?
Go to the dumpster and turn right.
Right.
Yeah.
Here. Okay.
And don't kick my beer.
His head goes to
All right, signing off.